Thank you. Thank you. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here and seeing everyone's faces. It's so intimate and extraordinary poetry. Opening. A gestation reaches its timely conclusion and her muscled hammock softens, slackens. I am with her wet slit, hands quiet, ready. A head down pressure, spine to belly, her womb now taut as a new balloon. I hear heartbeat, code, pains, come, go. A tuft of hair appears, recedes at ease. Her skin peels over a spongy first frown, and I map read, headland, suture, fontanelle. A flicker of eyelids, phantom of new. Her hands clutch knees, chin tucked in. I prop her heel on my hip, bear down. A nose tips, bloodline, too early to know. Her guttural sounds deep, old as Eve. I breathe in rhythm between her pushes. A fold of ear unfurls as lips pucker apart. Her fingers reach over, stroke baby hair. I loosen cord, a rough touch can mutilate. A breath-held moment, bruised blue runs to red. Her opening forgotten already starts to close. Thank you. That was my, it took me about 25 years to write that poem because it's a reflection of the first delivery I did as a student midwife, and still in my fingertips. I'm going to weave between family and I guess the joys and complexities of caring tonight. So I'm going to start with one that's a little bit of an introduction to my heritage. Magpies, 1880. An apron service girl needs dough at dawn, scours dirty pans with sand, my great-grandmother. My great-grandfather cracks his shackles, a free man, merchant seaman, migrates Atlantic in filth and salt to London docks coal black. Enchanted in shadows of an East End tavern, a mixed opalescent pair, eyes bright by gaslight. Her belly swells, births, leaves charcoal foundling on a doorstep. My grandfather soothes off his mother's last suckle, wakes to thread shiny charms to aunt's apron ties. Some say this child is Brazilian or from less riotous parts of America, never Africa, always too incendiary. Family secrets scatter as magpies fly away to roost. Thank you. I still don't know that, my heritage of my great-grandfather, so some people say get a test, other people, I don't know. Another really important person in my life is my Aunt Doreen. She's just celebrated her 100th birthday. She lives on her own, and it's spectacular. And she was a midwife in 1941. Oh, does help to get to the right page, doesn't it? I've got two poems called Doreen, and I was on the wrong one. So this one's about my aunt. Doreen packs petticoats made of parachutes. She practices injections of penicillin, loaded a silver bullet for syphilis. Prays for uncomplicated births, hears of prem babies left by open windows. She does visits on a rickety pedal cycle in winters of power cuts and too cold for Terry nappies to dry, trudges through snowdrifts, wears a hot water bottle under layers and layers. She treats hungry, beaten children, pots in London smog, constantly combs, knits, one day off duty a month, watches Royal Elizabeth's wedding with scone and knitting. She dresses Miss Muzzle's legs, covered in coal dust and ulcers. Mrs. Spencer makes custard with her breast milk to satisfy husband's desires. Spoons cow's milk into her baby. The other 9 children play out somewhere till tea time. Her worst day, a young mother bleeds out, and a filthy house in Willesden. A great day meeting Kevin, whom she delivered 60 years ago at her 100th birthday. Thank you. My aunt is amazing. I guess I ought to give you a little bit of an introduction about my own experiences of working in midwifery. I mean, obviously a total privilege, so I hope this poem captures that. Fish fingers and baked beans. I remember door knocks, neighbours in labour borrowing tenors for the gas, private clear blue pregnancy tests. I remember delivering a dead baby, being cathartically sick on Merlot, waking on Anna's sofa under blankets. I remember forgetting to collect the kids from school, delayed by an emergency C-section, and Tina dished out snacks and telly. I remember picnics in snow, torrents, tree climbing, mudslides, picking up our shredded threads of mothering. I remember one night the kids taking turns projectile vomiting off bunk beds, and a long list of home visits the next day. I remember waste strikes, cuts in care, mountains of recording, litigation, dread, fish fingers, and baked beans for a week. I remember sobbing in your kitchen, resignation letter sealed and stamped. I remember to toast many mothers. Thank you. Oh, it's so lovely to see everybody. I thought I'd better give you a little insight into my family. Pratibha's poems are fantastic at making that beautiful language and stories of families come off the page. And so I'm going to share one about my mum and one about my dad. My mother's stationery case. Dear Mum, I scatter your ashes. Open your red leather stationery wallet. Its zip works perfectly. In a plastic pocket are 3 black and white passport photos. One, you with short black hair, determined to curl to a softer style. Eyebrows drawn impeccably, lips painted Estee Lauder cranberry. Your smile I don't recognise. This photo is ripped along an edge where you unattached Dad one time. On your wide 70s collar, a Wedgwood brooch. A couple walking under a tree canopy. I bought for your birthday with boring Saturday jobs. There's another split double photo taken in a Woolworths booth. I remember my twin cut away her half when I left home, our first day as separates. I have Dad's half smile framed by spots. In a stamp slot is your Pitman shorthand mini list of short forms and contractions. Shorthand classes took you to hospitals, note-taking. for heart surgeons during the first British transplants. A newspaper notice. The bride attired in a dress of white twill, over taffeta embroidered with pearls and diamante. You paid for your dress and flowers. Her bouquet, cream roses, stephanotis, lily of the valley. Lily of the valley, waxy blooms, exotic fragrances. You and Dad, in a press release, embraced beside a 3-tier wedding cake. Before my wedding day, you give me some money to buy a single bed. A news story falls onto the floor. A photo of you grinning, holding a food processor you won in a weekly crossword competition. Tucked at the very back of your red leather stationery wallet is a note I wrote after my first month training to nurse. You gave me a pack of notelets and said to share every single detail. This one has a girl in a sombrero writing in a field of tulips. One about my mum. This one's about my dad and my adventures with him. Escapades with Dad. Dad says, when we are first born, our stomachs are the size of walnuts. He spews up his gut full of fears, tiny cannibals who eat and shares his cheese pickle sandwiches. Dad teaches me to slide a rule. He says logarithms and amoeba are proof of our existence. Computers will devour our facts, and remember, pies are always square, never round. Dad lies belly down over cliffs at Land's End, tells me to straddle his ankles. He reaches for rocks for his rockery. We body pivot, stretch, rocks splurge into squall. Dad sleeps behind door locks. Hospital ghosts float too close. He puckers to kiss and spits pills, pockets full of drop stitch holes, trail crumbs from chair to bed. Thank you. I'm going to share a poem about why I started writing poetry in my mid-40s, and I was, well, I'll share a slight story in that I was, the poem's called Burnout, and I was advised to go to a short story course where you read a short story, then you talk about it, because my language was muddling up. So someone there said, you might want to write something. And I said, what do you mean write something? And they said, well, you can write whatever's in your head, Helen. I'm like, what? I can write whatever's in my head. So this is partly what you're getting, is what's in my head. I'll have to hold this one a bit closer. Small print. Burnout. Another dear mum letter. When we meet, I perch on a sofa at the far end, knees tucked up tight, feet hover off the carpet, face scrunches in twisted tissues. We wait as long as it takes. I have run out of life, burnt out, my words flow as a temperamental tap. I write 2003 on a document. When the year is, I forget. I agree to our sessions. Next session, I say, I plan to sit with plants. I talk about zombie dreams. I say, they judged me from the day I was born, all £5, plum-coloured, limp and little. My work email inbox is over 323 a week, unread, no reply comes to mind. I say I juggle watermelons and food taste of soggy cardboard. I mention a painting at work made me sick. I blurt out my doctor has written me off with work-related stress. As I leave today's session, I mention a still bar wedged in my throat. We stand still. I flick and kick tingles away. I phone to say, I can't come today. I have many appointments. Occupational health, a teacher to see, an empty fridge. I come. Slide a little nearer. My feet reach the carpet. I point to a vase of my favourite flowers. I say my brain is less full of bees today. I look for circles and square edges on pictures and plant pots. Today I bring printed words of when I hurt, glue on a roll of lining paper, sit quietly. I say, when I was 3, Dad collapsed on the floor. I watched ambulance men, Dad disappeared. For Christmas that year, I unwrapped a nurse's uniform, pill pot, stethoscope, fob watch, bandages, thermometer. From that day, caring was my life. I sit straight, talk slower, soles of my shoes reach the floor, and I leave behind poems. Thank you. I think I've got time to do 2 more. So I'm going to do a new one, actually. At the Nuyorican Poets Cafe, what they say is new shit. Anyway, shouldn't say that, but that's what they say. Cool. So a new poem. There's I wrote it in response to the Wade Roe ruling recently, and this is my response. My menopause passes me by. Last night I dreamt I'd murdered my mother with a knife. In hindsight, this was definitely a metaphor for my menopause. All the generations of women in my family give birth short and sharp and outgrow ovaries when we are all 38. I had 3 children under 6, worked as a midwife, too busy to notice my womb stop bleeding rubies, and menopause was taboo. I cared for women with magnificent bodies, whilst my body was a machine. I remember itching, I thought, from new knickers, and my vagina felt fizzy. To be honest, this wasn't an unpleasant sensation, a reminder of sex when touching became wetter and loose change spilled from pockets. I never had regular periods, and now I'd had an abortion, tubes severed, stitched. Wow, that was that. I put hot flushes down to anger over injustice, NHS cuts. I forgot to pick the kids up from school. Everything overflowed until I short-circuited. I burnt out. A doctor prescribed antidepressants, rest and poetry. My menopause arrived unnoticed and uncelebrated. Anyway, I'm celebrating it with you now. And my last poem, oh, it's so lovely to be here. What number is it? 48, I think. Book. It's back to front. It's called Fontanelle. It's got a fetal skull on the front and the arms of my daughters. It's available everywhere. You're very welcome to buy a copy. My last poem is written in the Syrian refugee crisis, and I think it's still relevant today. child and I. A sparrow boy arrives at my door. He drops empty into this flat pack city, sleeps tonight where no bullets fly. Dreams. It's dark, water, ice, black fins of shark. Our languages are mismatched. At breakfast, I cook scrambled eggs. He pinches clouds of sourdough. As petals they float in his bowl of warm milk. Thank you.
That was brilliant. Thank you so much, Helen. Please, would you unmute yourselves and give a round of applause? That was wonderful. You know, it's so important to talk about women's issues vividly and openly, and the celebration of menopause. I mean, we just don't do it, do we, even now, even though things are supposedly more open. But that was really important, and to me it's very, very important. I think people, women especially, should speak of those things. And the other thing is, it's like a journey through.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, Crafty Crows is one of my first poetry homes at the beginning of lockdown, and it's just a total delight to be here and to read to you all. So I'm going to start out with 3 poems from a triptych of birds and a few loose feathers. Many of the poems in that book are inspired by my childhood, which was not such an easy one, but particularly my relationship with my mother, and the writing of the poems in that book and subsequent ones is a tremendous journey of healing and moving to a celebration, really, of my mother. But I'm starting out with one that touches more on my father. Is the sound okay? Yeah, okay. So Padraig, who drove the snakes out of Ireland. At the allotment, Daddy forked the crumbly black earth till the air quaked with anticipation of excess. Me sifting stones in search of treasure. The robin sat pert on the lip of the bucket, meant to carry spuds or cabbages, the occasional giggle-tickle carrot back to placate the mammy. The bird's eye bright with a lust for worms, his song a crystal cataract of merry, though none of the seeds we sowed ever showed head out of the sly earth, and we saw nothing of the slow worm Daddy promised, so that his name being Padraig too, I guessed he must be a saint, especially when he himself vanished. Though he turned up months later at the end of school again and again and again, till I had to tell the mammy where the toys and books came from, and that got me sent off to board at St. Bridget's Convent, where the head nun was nice to you if your mammy gave her fruit cake in a tin, bottles of orange Linctus sherry, a crochet shawl like frothy cobwebs, none of which my mammy could afford, Padraig having banished more than snakes. Thank you. The next one is, and I've just pulled my piece of paper out of the book. Okay, hold on a sec. Sorry about that. It's a night for it, isn't it? My page mark, I just pulled it out. Okay. So the next one, Wild Lass of Kells, is inspired by my mother, who was in fact born and brought up in Kells in Ireland. She shuffles on the curb outside O'Shaughnessy's, corner of Kelly and Dunleven Road. Her eyes the colour of Our Lady's veil, scorched bluer by her copper curls. On the lookout for the da, her task of a Friday night to wheedle the wages off of him before he sets out on the lash, glad of a break from the chores, socks like a flock of crows forever jostling, hand-me-down frocks in need of hems, pants snagged on barbed wire nails atop of farmers' walls and fences. Herself the firstborn of a baker's dozen, endless mopping up of spats, snail snots, scabby porridge pots. Licks of laughter, yellow light, sidle out the gaping door into the night, let out by culchies on their shuffle to the bar, Egypts with purple slurs for eyes, glances tossed her way, collection plate clink of small change at Sunday Mass. The odd time a flash of lust, the most times shame. A rare smile to build her up. Sure, aren't you a dote now, Delia? Looking out for your mammy. God bless yourself. Eyes cast down, pious daughter of the Virgin, Lord love the child, in her wilting dress, miraculous blue medal clipped to the chest of her tatty cardigan. An occasion of sin, to be sure, Slovenes might take advantage of, till she glances up, that glare, brazen as hell's fire, from the child of Mary of the scry eye, seventh daughter of a seventh son, flame hex of a wild blood tinker, skipping off home to a last scald of the pot, wedge of soda farl, thick with dripping. Her pocket is a clatter of coins, only the lighter by a bleary-eyed pint. Thank you. So another aspect of my childhood that was very significant was the Catholic Church. I was very pious as a young child, and then things began to change. Exodus. In the confessional at school's end, the priest's face has the sheen of the girl's Mary Quant nude lipstick. She fidgets on the hassock. Incense thralls her, and a fantasy of hands milking themselves behind the grill. Words hiss. Tell me, my child, tongue click over cracked lips, flicker in the priest's groin. Exactly what did yous do with him? 3 times the question, 3 times her reply, a Judas crow. I slept with him. She gabbles through the penance, Hail Mary 20 times, seethes down the nave through a sea of sleepy motes, scents of lilies, unctuous echoes. Candles in the Mary Chapel gutter flare. Our Lady tails her from under lidded eyes, mute, cold stone. The church door groans, clangs shut as she steps out into the yard, out of her flaunt of piety, out of Mother Church. A crow on a gravestone ruffles its wings, cackles applause. Breeze touzles her hair, baptism of apple blossom, absolution. Thank you. Okay. The next one, it's from the new pamphlet, Miniskirts in the Wasteland. That's wasteland as in T.S. Eliot. This poem refers to an incident when I was quite a lot younger. Octopus ride. The cage dangles upside down on the tip of a tentacle, flung like a baby's arm to its steepest sprawl. It idles in the breeze, quivers, my knuckles white, tight with clutching the metal bar. A singe of sugar rises from the candy floss stand and axle grease, Woolworth's cheap scent, shouts, laughter, all the hurdy-gurdy grizzle of the fair. I breathe like sipping water in a drought, barely enough to keep me conscious, lest falling into a belly-bloating wail, I loose my grip. How might it be to slip, to soar, a swift inscribing secrets, or the blood clot that might have been you slipping out from between my legs, to slump akimbo, a crooked star glinting in the churned up mud, essence seeping through its jellyfish skin. My fingers tire, begin to fail to open, but the engine judders back to life. Cogs, once smooth, stutter me back to the start. I clamber out, stagger through quicksand crowds, my face a clown's mask, and though my lips curve upwards, as if all this had been nothing more than a lark, my heart weeps clotted tears. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to read a poem which was published recently by Fly on the Wall Press in Demos Rising. This anthology, the proceeds go towards Amnesty, so please buy it. Lots of wonderful poems in it. In the slips. While the world watches, Violetta, clad in years the measure of a week, journeys from Odessa with her doll and cat. And a grandma, her face a crumpled map of lifetime drills, framed by a scarf the color of losing, urges a boy soldier, put this flower in your pocket. Hopes his flesh, rotted into trampled mud, bone and blood transmuted to a claggy womb, will birth a crop of smiling sunflowers. And men in black, as if spectators at a cricket match, watch a tank grizzle over cobblestones across the city square, while a man sprints into its path, scoops up a hand grenade, underarms it at a pile of rubble, the dog end dangling from his lip, a red-eyed fuse. Thank you. Okay. Josephine, am I about halfway through? No.
Sorry, probably a little more than that, but about another 5-7 minutes like that. Okay.
So I'm going to read two now from the new pamphlet. As Josephine said, it's set in the 60s, Notting Hill, London and India. Reflections. By the pond in Holland Park, a heron ladens the dawn with ashen memories of a day down Portobello when sunlight splintering a window dazzled and my skirt, a swirl of orange silk and mirror discs, flashed semaphore warnings I ignored. In the market, costermongers' shouts contused the air, gutters a carnage of jaundiced cabbages, mossy lemons, a tulip, crushed, disenchanted love. On the way home, clouds, coffin heavy, rallied, silted streets with stuttering traffic, while in the bus halted beside mine, a girl wept my choked back tears. Thank you. Jumble. Oh, I've got an echo now. Ah, okay. Tucked in the pocket of an Afghan coat with anarchy of hankies, Fox's glacier mints, ticket to Shepherd's Bush for a long ago rendezvous with a man who failed to show you glimpsed a week ago in Holland Park, leaning on the arm of a crone and a silver-capped cane, neck brace. Eyes no duller, 50 years on than the day down Portobello Market, he flourished a puce silk cravat out from under stained sheets in a tea chest beside a bric-a-brac stall before the sun in splendor. You, jealous of a girl he smiled at, sitting on the curb, sipping a joint, her bare feet in the gutter beside a blue mold orange, crumpled Reisler pack. A henna-haired flower you in cheesecloth frock you itched to pluck, to crush. The air a ferment of rotten apples, patchouli. Love the one you're with, wafting out an open window. His maestro's hands that night, white and fluent, charmed you all a quiver from your lair of convent niceties and doubts, hexed with murmured phrases, coaxing till you pledged to banish Kelka fleur and Arden's apple blossom, douse yourself in eau de sauvage, sharpen fangs, claws, howl at the moon. Canticles you defile at Shepherd's Bush with curses. Thank you. A couple more about my mother. Now this one, that if those of you who are my kind of age may recognize something of what I'm speaking about. Hug. My mother's heart was a lake. Its frozen surface cracked when I was young, with insults hurled her way, and I hurled many, wounding like rocks, till her cool glaze became a starburst of splintered love. Even her delight in daffodils withered since the bunch of yellow bells she gave me on my 15th birthday, whose whole heads I bit off, mad at her for some imagined slight, and in an acid spritz of blame spat her way. When my mother, murmuring to herself, sure the poor girl's tired, patted my arm, our only physical exchange, for we never hugged. Having learnt years later how an infant monkey languishes if deprived of its mother's touch, I subjected her to a lingering clinch. Not just a brief, ooh la la, peck on either cheek, stay 2 feet away from one another sort of hug, but a belly to belly, chest to chest squeeze, palming up and down her back, as though grooming the silk-eyed Persian hunkered on the couch, glaring, and on a normal day, the only flesh my mother or myself would handle. And when she tried to edge away, I fastened my grip like, now I've got you, Ma, you're going nowhere. The way when small, I ached for her to hold me, limpet tight. Thank you. Josephine, one or two short ones? One?
One or two short ones, yes.
Okay. See if I can find my... Okay, again, finishing up with my mother, but the resolution moving towards a healing. Dawn walk. The sea sparkles, a glimmer of fallen stars, glint on the horizon of coral light. I pause at the water's edge, bowl my hands as if dawn might be cradled like a gull's egg. Wave sluice the shore, the legs of an oyster catcher stood head bent, a prophet hearkening. My bare toes scrabbling at lines fine as capillaries. Mysteries clammed in sand and heart, dissolving as I watch. Sun seeping through the clouds is an ache for my mother's smile at our chance meeting by the cross, when instead of spoiling her with tea and crack, I hurried on. And finally, on reaching heaven, your eyes the bubble sparkle of a moe schlancha. You'll float across in that cherry cardigan you favored towards the end. Stuck at home, you toasted the hours with a click of needles, knitting socks for friends. I dropped by or phoned less often than I later wished, though that last time I brought the cake. A treat we'd baked together years before, your strong hand on mine, steering the heartbeat symmetry of the wooden spoon through an anarchy of icing, sugar, butter, splash or more, dependent on the mood, of Bewley's coffee. The spill of your song fizzing the shadows of the basement kitchen as I jammed together sponges open-hearted as your love. The glory of walnut halves tallied 1 to 10 onto my palm to be set with caution on the buttercream glaze. Baked in honor of the day, the sun with its celebratory gleam unseasonable. 10th of the 10th, the date you and I each entered this world, and that you, even with your 6th sense, never guessed would be the day you'd leave.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you. Clive, could we stop recording now, please?